everybody, I'm Wayne,
Hey, I'm Kate.
and this is the Wayne and Kate Show. Welcome, and tonight we have with us a special guest by the name of Matt. Matt's a long-time friend of both of us, and so we welcome him to the show. He's going to provide a little bit different perspective for us as we talk about Purity Matters. Now, we said in our very first session of Purity Matters that if purity doesn't matter to you, it will not happen. And so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about guarding your gates, how to ensure that if you're a person who's committed in your heart to purity, how can you kind of set yourself up? How can you set the stage for purity to happen in your life? And so why don't we jump right in? So we live in a very immoral world. It doesn't matter where you look or what you listen to. It doesn't take much to understand that we're kind of surrounded by evil, right?
Absolutely.
And I kind of think of it as like a marinade. You know, when I want to cook chicken on the grill, sometimes I'll put it in a marinade. Matt makes some pretty killer chicken on the grill, and he makes these things that are like shrimp with bacon wrapped around it.
Whoa.
They're fancy.
Oh, that's
So
They're
you have
fancy.
to marinate that stuff.
Yes.
You do marinate it, don't you?
You do. We put it in Italian dressing.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
the whole purpose behind a marinade is that the longer something sits in it, the more like the marinade it tastes, right? And so if we're not very careful as believers, we will
Sit
find
in our society, in our environment, and come out tasting like our environment.
exactly. And so when there's sexual promiscuity and there's all kinds of profanity and crudeness and filth, it'll kind of rub off on us, and we'll begin to look like the world, and that's a problem because Scripture says that we should be in the world but not of the world.
Yeah.
And Katie mentioned one time before that we're supposed to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that means if we're transformed, if we're in the world but not of the world, then there is a distinct difference between us and the world.
Specifically in purity tonight,
Absolutely.
we're going to talk about guarding your gate.
Yeah, so how can you make sure that all of this that's around you doesn't affect your heart and make you an impure person? Because we said with our students tonight, it does not matter if you make a commitment to purity. If you don't have a heart of purity, then
You're not going to be a pure person.
you're not going to be a pure person, and most likely you will not even keep whatever commitments you make. You have to be pure of heart first, and so that's where we need to
so
focus.
true.
So how do we do that? How can we guard our gates? Well, there's so much stuff in the world that exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to get its hooks into you and to pull you even more towards immorality. We have an enemy. 1 Peter 5:8 says that our enemy, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And so we have an enemy who has a vested interest in destroying us, in wrecking our testimony and our witness. And so all of these things that are out there, he puts out there in order to be like hooks to grab us and to get us on his line and to pull us away from God. And so there's a neat little video we'll start with that kind of illustrates what all of this stuff does to us. So enjoy this little video.
It looks so real.
It is. Oh, you talking about the bait looks real? He was like, I'm not that hungry.
Well, it looks real.
Oh,
Like,
yes, I
second
am.
thought. Never mind.
Yeah.
And the
we got it.
replay is just...
And now he's hooked. Like he's on the line now. Look at it. You can see the. But so often that is exactly what happens to us, right? I mean, we get hooked on some things. Whether it's Christians who are hooked on some kind of drug, or a Christian man who's hooked on maybe pornography or something like that, you know.
Or even women now.
Or women, yeah. It's so easy for Satan to get his hooks in us. And so how can we avoid that? Well, look at this graphic down in the bottom right-hand corner. I think this is a great illustration because our eyes and our ears really are the pathways to our hearts, to our souls. And so if we want to avoid impurity in our hearts, then we need to guard our gates. And that's what the title of this little talk is this evening. So why should I guard my gates is the question that we're asking. Well, first of all, you should guard your gates, your eyes and your ears, because your eyes light your soul. Now, in my house, we have these things called windows. Do you have windows in your house?
Yeah, we have a few windows.
In your dungeon?
In our dungeon house, yes.
We don't have windows in my house.
Matt doesn't have windows. That explains his big eyes
Yeah.
and his
Yeah,
pale
it's like-
complexion.
Yeah, he's going around like this.
Yeah. And his pupils are always like pinpricks. But you know, windows in a house, they perform a lot of different things. One is they allow you to see outside, to see what's happening in the world around the house, which is always good in case there's a zombie apocalypse or something. You want to see them coming.
Yeah.
But another good thing that windows do is that during the summer you can open them and you can get some fresh air in. But during the winter, I don't know if you realize it or not, but light comes in through a window and it actually bears with it some solar energy. So windows can actually be very beneficial in heating your home during the winter when it's cold, because they let that solar energy in. Now, when I was a kid, I remember we had these windows in our living room that kind of faced the sun in the morning. And I remember on like cold Saturday mornings while I was watching cartoons or whatever, like Scooby-Doo and He-Man, because those were the days when cartoons were
Yeah,
great,
I don't even
right?
know what that
Good.
is.
Yeah, the good old days of
G.I.
cartoons.
Joe.
Bugs Bunny.
Transformers.
Okay, I
all
know
that
some
good
of
stuff.
that is.
Yes.
And but I remember laying in the living room on the shag carpet watching cartoons and like rolling over so that I can get in the sunlight where the sun kind of came in on the carpet, and laying there and just soaking up that sunlight, because that was the warmest spot in the house
Yeah.
if you could be in the sun. And that's because light brings with it warmth, okay? And so your eyes light your soul. Your eyes, if you are focused on holy things, then they bring the light of God into your soul. But on the other hand, if your eyes are not focused on holy things, if they're focused instead on evil things, then they bring darkness, and along with darkness comes coldness. Okay, and so it's important then what you focus on. Scripture says it this way. Jesus in Matthew 6 said, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness." So if the light within you is darkness, how deep is that darkness? Now, Jesus isn't talking about bad eyesight like we think of with glasses and stuff like that. What he's saying is if the eye is the lamp of your body, then whether the eye creates light in your soul or darkness in your soul determines whether it's a good eye or a bad eye. So in other words, the things that we focus our eyes on are what affect the kind of person that we become. If your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. That means that you're focusing on holy things. But if your eye is bad, in other words, you're focused on evil,
The filth of the world.
the filth of the world, then your whole body is going to be full of darkness. So this is an important point for us to remember. Now, we don't have to look very hard to see evil things, right? So you're a college student. What kinds of things kind of cross your periphery as you look out on a daily basis? What are some things that you might see in the college world?
The first thing that comes to my mind would probably be clothing, because there's no dress code at college, and you can, at MCC specifically, there's no dress code. You can wear whatever you want. So, especially during the August, like the hotter months when school's in session, girls just tend to wear whatever they want. A crop top with a pair of skimpy pants is perfectly fine because there's no dress code. They're supposed to say something, but they usually don't. So even for a girl, seeing those kind of things can put, images in your mind, and it can honestly shape the way that you think you're supposed to be dressing. But if you want to be a godly woman, you're supposed to dress like a godly woman would dress.
What about you, Matt? You're in the business world.
Yes.
Out in the work world. Well, what kind of things kind of come across your radar in the visual area that you have to kind of avoid?
Well, I mean, for me, I wouldn't say it's dress so much, but I mean, you do have those instances where even some professional dress can be kind of revealing
risque,
or risque or things of that matter. And I mean, I guess as far as seeing things, I mean, you're there to do a job, so it's not like you're just hit daily with those things. But at the same time, I mean, you are in the world, so you're going to be with people that don't have the same worldview as you.
Right.
Probably talk different.
Yeah,
speak
they
differently,
talk different. Yeah, and I would say that might be one of the bigger things that you would see is people maybe they use profanity or.
And I can say, like, in the parking lot at MCC, sometimes people just blasting whatever kind of music they want because it's.
Well, save those thoughts because we're going to talk about ears in a minute.
Yeah, sorry.
Right, but I mean, some things that I even brought up with our students tonight was like, even like, remember that Hardee's commercial where the girl was eating the hamburger?
Basically naked.
And she just got like a few parts of her body strategically covered, right? But why? How does a half naked woman sell a hamburger? You know what I'm saying? The idea there. I mean,
they know what sells. They know what men will
they're trying to get
remember.
you to connect a hamburger with a sexual thought because they realize that sexuality is one of the strongest feelings, the strongest impulses. And I was telling everybody here about the billboards that right now in our city are flashing for a casino nearby who are having some male strippers come on the weekend before Valentine's. So they're trying to draw these women over to the casino the weekend before Valentine's.
That's just crazy, man.
It is crazy.
To basically
Crazy.
cheat on their husbands with their eyes.
It's like like mental cheating.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly
And,
what Jesus called it.
yeah.
Cheating in your heart.
Yeah. He
Adultery.
says whoever looks at a woman to lust after her
Commits
has committed
adultery
in her heart.
in her heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm pretty sure that he would say the same thing applies to women looking at men.
Yeah.
Whoever looks at a man to lust after him commits adultery in her heart. So, everywhere around us, man, this stuff's everywhere. And good and evil's always been symbolized as light and dark, right? And so Jesus said this about himself. He said, the light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. Where do we do evil deeds?
In the dark.
In the
Dark.
darkness, right?
People don't usually rob houses in bright daylight. You know what I mean? Like, typically
A lot more thieving and robbery
Happens at night.
and a lot more
Thievery.
murdering
Yeah.
and
murdering
and kidnapping and stuff like that.
I was gonna say my parents always told me growing up, and maybe even my grandma, it happened from somebody that was a father or a parental figure for me. Growing up, it's like nothing good ever happens after midnight.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
Yep.
I've heard
They don't
that.
call 12 o'clock midnight the witching hour
Yes.
for nothing.
no, exactly.
So look, he goes on to say, for everyone who practices wicked things hates the light and avoids it, so that his deeds may not be exposed. But anyone who lives by the truth comes to the light, so that his works may be shown to be accomplished by God. So what Jesus is doing is he's setting up this stark contrast between evil people and holy people, and it all has to do with light and dark. And so when we focus on things that are light-related things, okay, holiness, then it brings light into our soul. But when we focus on evil things, it brings darkness into our soul, okay? And that's important for us to remember. So when we welcome evil into our eyes, we're welcoming darkness into our hearts, and darkness becomes coldness and towards God, and coldness towards God becomes behaviors, actions, feelings, and things like that that mark us as evil people. This Watchman Nee was a Chinese pastor who was part of the early church underground church planting movement in China, and he says the devil abhors light and truth because these remove the ground of his working. So, Katie, what's that say to you?
That's a really powerful statement, I think. He really recognizes that the devil hates light and truth because he works in the dark. He works in the opposite of light and truth. So, of course, he would hate light and truth. He can't work in them.
So if I want to limit the amount of influence that Satan might have in the way that I think and the way I act, what is the best possible thing that I could do?
Fill your soul with light.
Flood my soul with light. Exactly. It's like when you walk in, I'm sure you don't ever have this happen in your house, but when you walk in the kitchen in the middle of the night and you flip on the
The
light
Light.
switch, and there are all these little roaches in the middle of the kitchen.
Oh, gosh.
But what do they
know what you were
do?
gonna
What do they do?
They scatter.
They scatter
hate the light.
because they
yeah.
hate the light, right?
Like our youth room mouse. We can't ever find him.
I think he's dead now.
Okay.
There is a smell. So
I was gonna say Maddox said that room back there
yeah,
stunk.
It's
we're
my
gonna track.
office.
We're gonna track down the smell in Katie's office and figure out where this mouse has breathed his last.
But mice are just another creature that runs whenever you turn the lights on.
Yeah.
They hate the light.
Yeah, and evil people hate the light because their deeds are darkness. And so if you want to be a person of purity, you want to be a person whose life is marked by purity, then the best thing you can do is feast your eyes on holy things and avoid dark things because you want the light of holiness to flood into your soul and to destroy any ability that Satan has to work. Okay?
Yeah.
So your eyes light your soul. That's one reason you should guard your eyes. Okay? But you should also guard your ears because your ears fuel thoughts. Now, at my house, we have a generator. And I guess it was about a month ago now, we had a winter storm come through and almost
December,
everybody
wasn't it?
lost
Yeah.
power. Did y'all lose power at your house?
We didn't know.
Oh, you lucky things.
A lot of
lives
people
on-
in Southeast
She
did
lives
that.
like on the upscale
Yeah,
side of town.
that's right. She lives on the side of town where they make sure they have
Yeah.
electricity.
Yeah, we
Oh, okay.
yeah, we didn't have power for like a day and a half.
Yeah,
like
and-
out
and-
where I live.
Yeah, and we went almost 2 days too. But we had a generator. And so we had our refrigerator going and we were able to cook and all that kind of stuff. But a generator is really cool. But really all the generator does is it converts one thing into another. It converts one type of fuel into another type of fuel. It converts gasoline into electricity. Okay, electricity then provides fuel for the rest of the house to do all their electrically charged things that
Yeah.
electrical things do. Okay? So, but listen, here's what's important. Our ears are kind of like generators themselves. You hear things and they convert what you hear into thoughts. So all of us, I think, have probably experienced times when you have heard some things and then later you found yourself thinking about those things. Okay? Or maybe you weren't just thinking about those things. Maybe you found yourself having a inner monologue, a conversation in your head with yourself about those things. Sometimes it may, turn into even an argument in your head about some things. I've had that happen. Like when somebody would say something that really kind of challenged my faith or something like that.
Do you sit there and go, do I really believe that? Like, was that correct? I wonder what the Bible says about that. Should I go look?
Yeah. And I've had times when Satan has really tried to just
Make you doubt.
make me doubt. And I would there'd be these voices in my head like, Wayne, you know better than that. I mean, this is what you believe. This is what the Bible says. And you end up having this conversation
Yeah.
back and forth in your head. Well, the same thing can happen with evil thoughts. When we listen to evil things, then we will begin to have evil thoughts, evil conversations, evil arguments even. And eventually, if we're not careful, the things that we're thinking always find their way out of our mouth.
Think them long enough and they'll come out your mouth.
Or they find their way into action. Okay? And so that's why it's so important that we be careful what we hear. Okay? Now, it's said this way in Scripture. Paul says this to the Philippians. He says, finally, brothers, whatever's true, whatever's honorable, whatever's just, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's commendable, if there's any moral excellence, and if there's any praise, dwell on these things. Okay? What does it mean to dwell on something?
Think about it really hard. A lot.
Okay, so what is Paul telling us here then?
Fix our attention on whatever is pure, lovely. He says commendable, true, honorable. So like focus on like heavenly things.
Yeah.
I think that's in Colossians too.
Yeah, so if we're going to think about, we just said, right, we said that the ears are the generators for our thoughts. So if we're instructed to dwell on moral things of moral value, how do things get converted into into thoughts of moral value? What is the fuel that we have to put in order for it to be converted?
Well, you need to,
Heavenly things.
surround yourself with godly things.
Exactly. Holy things and godly things. Things of moral value.
Yeah.
When you listen to things of moral value, then it inspires thoughts of moral value. You begin to dwell on things of moral value. And so it's very important what you fuel your ears with. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but have you noticed that when you're around people who use a lot of profanity, that later on you'll have something happen and you may even like curse inside your head? You know, like it may not make it out of your mouth, and if you're alone, it might make it out of your
It's
house.
like if you stub your toe and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, and
Yeah.
then you have to stop yourself.
Yeah.
True.
You know, maybe you watch a movie or something and there's just like this line in there and it may have some filth in it, but then later
was
you
meant to
find
be
yourself
funny.
you find yourself thinking about that line. You know
Trying
what
to
I'm saying?
figure out why is that so funny to me, maybe.
Yeah. Or when you listen to music with sexual themes or stuff like that, then even after you're not even listening to the song, but you're thinking about those. Like, man, I got to listening to Jason Aldean for a while, and he's got some, songs that are kind of catchy.
Yeah, he is.
But man, I would catch myself like walking around singing about some girl, and I'm like, who am I even singing about?
A girl and a truck.
A girl in a truck, yeah, and
Or a tractor.
yeah. or that's
That's Kenny,
that's
Kenny
my-
Chesney.
That's my song. I've been
Yeah.
waiting all night for
Yeah.
it to come on.
Luke
That's-
Bryan.
Oh, Luke Bryan.
Bryan,
Yeah.
Come here, boy. Let's-
Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, those you listen to that stuff and it comes back to you even when you don't expect to. When you can be playing video games and having like that's one of the things nowadays is these violent video games and stuff like that. And there's they're tying some of these even violent outbursts like some of these shootings and stuff like that back to people who played these violent video games.
And that's real. They can prove that.
Yeah, they can prove that.
Yeah.
And that's because when you indulge in that kind of stuff, you listen to that kind of stuff, then it becomes part of your thinking.
You
And-
start to think that it's okay. It, like you said earlier, it desensitizes
Exactly.
you to it.
What I was going to say, and to me, when we think about this, I always think about like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, because he's always like glummy and he's like nobody loves me, and it's like he always has that perpetual gray cloud hanging over him.
Yeah.
And in this same instance, if you listen to enough filth or you do enough things like that, you're eventually that's how your whole outlook's going to be.
Exactly.
Your outlook.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And hey, and what about like, guys in locker rooms or at work? 'Cause
Yeah.
it happens at work around the water cooler, people telling dirty jokes. And you may not even laugh at it. You may be like, I can't believe they told that joke. But even if you say that, you're going to catch yourself later on
Thinking about it.
thinking about that joke. And you may even think about it until it becomes funny
Right.
to you. And you may go home and tell your wife.
Yeah, and you might, you might, but you
You may go home and tell your mom.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It depends.
But what I mean, we would listen to it and go, I can't believe they said that. But then we think about it long enough that it finds its way out.
Well, but I'll say this though, I've had coworkers in the past that knew I was a Christian, and if I would come in and they might say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and it's like I would always think, I don't want you to do that just because I walk in the room. You should be doing that all the time. But I guess it is kind of cool that that they would see me and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to
They
talk
have
that.
enough respect
Yeah, I'm not
for
going to
you.
talk that way because of how, your beliefs."
Yeah. Look at this other quote right here, and this is anonymous. We don't know who said it, but temptation usually comes in through a door that's been left deliberately open, right? So,
Not properly guarding your gate.
Yep.
yeah, so if you don't guard your ears and you don't guard your eyes, you're literally asking for impurity to just become part of who you are.
It's like not putting filters on your iPhone. You're just asking for bad stuff to tempt you.
Exactly. So now combine the power of the eyes with the power of the ears, and you put those two things together, and you really have got a recipe for disaster. And so that's why it's so important for believers to guard their eyes and their ears. Okay? Look at this picture down here in the corner. This is a picture of a reservoir, and we all understand how reservoirs work, right? You got water that comes into the reservoir. The reservoir is kind of a holding place, and then water that comes out of the reservoir can be used for a lot of different useful things, maybe for drinking water or for hydroelectric power or, whatever. But here's the deal. What happens if you find out that the reservoir is polluted? Like, it's not good for nothing. Nobody can swim in the water because it's got like MRSA in it or something, or some kind of flesh-eating bacteria. You can't drink the water because it'll cause like explosive dysentery, or you can't catch fish out of there because they're polluted, and some of the fish have two heads. When you find out that the water is polluted, how do you handle that? What do? You
call Captain Planet.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
You could do
I'm
that.
just kidding.
In Matt's pretend world.
That's that dated 90s reference. I'm sorry. You don't go near it.
Well, you don't go near it, absolutely. But how do you fix it?
You're going to have to go to where it started.
Yeah,
You're going to have to find the source of the pollution. And you're going to have to stop that pollution in order for things to change. And listen, this is where we're going with this. Why should you guard your gates? Because you become what you consume. What you allow to stream into your life through your ears and through your eyes, they ultimately find their way into your heart. And your heart is really a reservoir of all of your thoughts and feelings and emotions and beliefs. And so when your reservoir becomes polluted, then ultimately it pollutes your whole life. Okay? So the only way then, if you realize I have a polluted reservoir, the only way to clean that up is to go to the source of the pollution.
Cut it off.
Cut it off. Guard the gates, right? That's so hard to do. But look.
I'm not going to
You're
even
doing
attempt.
I won't either. I'll embarrass myself.
I'm not that coordinated.
Listen to what Jesus had to say in Luke 6:45. He says, a good man produces good out of the good storeroom of his heart, and an evil man produces evil out of the evil storeroom, for his mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. So what Jesus is saying is what's in your heart is ultimately going to come out. It's going to affect the way you live. It's going to affect who you are. So I don't know, what does this say? What does this say to you so far about, the importance of guarding gates?
Well, I think ultimately, if purity matters to you, what you watch and what you listen to is also going to matter to you. We kind of said from the beginning, if purity doesn't matter to you, it won't happen. So really, nothing we're saying is going to be of any importance to you if you have not already said, purposed in your heart, purity is a priority for me. I love God. I want to be obedient to his command for me to be pure. So without that first commandment, none of this matters. But if you've made that commitment to purity and you're going to stick with it, you have your boundaries set, you know where your line is, then, thinking about a good man produces good out of the good storeroom in his heart, you're obviously going to want a good storeroom so you can produce good. That's what I think.
Yeah. Good. And so look, here's the deal though. Satan, our enemy, is working to try and hook us and try to pull us in any way he can away from purity. And he wants to have an open channel to your heart. And the way that he does that is by getting open access to your eyes and your ears. He wants to be able to influence our hearts. And he does that through the gates that get to our heart, the
Satan
portals to our
works
hearts.
in the dark. So
Yeah.
if you don't have light coming in, he's going to be all up in there.
Exactly. Look at this one last quote here. When the root is bitterness, imagine what the fruit might be. Matt, why don't you unpack that one for us a little bit?
Wow.
It's bitterness.
When the root is bitterness, imagine what the fruit might be. When I think about that, I think about just us as humans being on earth. I mean, this earth that we live on is so tainted and so unperfect that, I mean, yeah, that's all we know. So we think, for the most part, yeah, we have it decently good here within respect. But, then we think about that fruit. We think about Christ, where we're going to be for eternity. We get pieces of that down here. But just imagine how it's going to be when we're in eternity with Christ, when we're praising His name. And that's what I think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then so that from that end, that means you've got like good roots, and then if you've got bitter roots, your fruit is going to be 10 times
Yep.
worse than your roots.
So then, if this is true, then one way I can know what kind of roots I have is by looking at the life I live. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, that's good stuff right there. All right. Well, then the question is, how do I guard my gates? If you're out there in YouTube world, you've heard everything we've had to say, and you're like, yes, I believe that. That's real. That's true. So how do I then go about guarding my gates?
What do you do now?
Yeah. Proverbs 4:23 through 27, I think, answers that question. He says, guard your heart above all else, for it is the source of life. Don't let your mouth speak dishonestly, and don't let your lips talk deviously. Let your eyes look forward, fix your gaze straight ahead, carefully consider the path for your feet, and all your ways will be established. Don't turn to the right or the left. Keep your feet away from evil. So I want to talk about one big picture thing that I think this says, and then we'll look at these four specific things. Big picture thing is, if you want to guard your gates, you have got to live a life of intentionality. You will not guard your gates on accident.
Never.
You will not accidentally be careful about what you see or what you hear.
That's when temptation will come in.
Exactly.
When you don't.
You have got to be intentional. You have got to make a commitment to purity and say, like Job says, I made a covenant with my eyes that I would not look lustfully at a woman. Okay? You've got to make a covenant with your eyes, a covenant with your ears, and say, I will not listen to things that are evil. I will not look at things that are evil. Okay? So that's kind of a big picture thing. I think that's what this passage is saying. Consider the path for your feet. Don't turn to the right or left. In other words, be intentional. Let your eyes look forward. Stay focused, okay? Number one, watch your mouth. Why? Because Jesus says out of the storeroom of your heart, your mouth speaks. That's the passage we were just looking at. So if you're saying things that are evil, then chances are your storeroom is full of evil. Watch the way you live. If the actions you're taking are evil, then chances are the storeroom of your heart is evil. So watch your mouth. That's a good litmus test for the condition of your heart. What are the things you're thinking about? If they're evil things, then that means you got pollution in your heart. And you're not doing a good enough job of guarding your gates, okay? Number two, stay focused. He says, let your eyes look forward. Fix your gaze straight ahead. Now, my question is, what is he fixing his gaze on? Well, we've already kind of talked about that when we talked about dwelling on things.
Godly things.
Yeah,
Godly.
he's focusing on holiness. He's focusing on the work that God's given him to do. He's focusing on Jesus. We're told to consider Jesus the author and perfecter of our faith, to keep focused on him, to run the race that's set before us. And so stay focused. Satan will do everything he can to make you lose your focus. But we've got to stay focused if we want to be people of purity. Avoid compromising situations.
We've talked about this a lot, specifically
lot.
with the girls
Yes.
and with the boys. Different.
A lot. We've talked about this.
A lot.
A lot.
A lot.
Avoid Hello.
Hello.
You said a little while ago, nothing good happens
After midnight.
after midnight. And I say nothing good happens after everybody else goes to bed.
That is true.
That for guys and ladies alike, you will find yourself more tempted when everybody else is in bed. Because for one, you're tired,
Yeah.
so your defenses are down.
Yeah.
And number two,
And
nobody's around to watch.
You've said before that when you're in your home, that's when you've let all your guards
Yeah,
down.
you
You're
like-
supposed to-
yeah.
You know, in your home, you're comfortable, you're relaxed.
We talked about this. Parents, I want you to hear what I'm saying to you. If you are a parent and you were watching this, I'm about to say something to you that could literally change the future for your son or your daughter. If your child has a computer in their bedroom or a cellular device in their bedroom, anything with internet access in their bedroom that does not have filters on it, you might as well run a sewage pipe into their bedroom and just dump sewage. Because I'm telling you, you are setting them up for failure. At my house, we have rules because we want to help our children avoid compromising situations. Computers are not allowed in bedrooms. Even me, I don't use computers in the bedroom. The computer sits at the kitchen table, or the computer, we have a kind of a desk in like a corner of our living room where it's used, or you can sit in the living room and use it. But you use computers where there's accountability, where other people can see it. And at the very least, if you're going to have a computer in your child's bedroom, please have some kind of filtering system on there.
Well, I was going to say that, and that's like for my boys, Landon and Maddox. I mean, they have a set amount of time they can be on devices. They're not even on devices during the week. So, they know it's like, okay, well, you can do this. But like you said, it's important that you put those safeguards on them, because if you don't, they're going to give into that temptation and do things that they don't need to be doing.
That's right. That's right. So that's like one huge area. But hey, here's another one, parents. If you allow a boyfriend to go back to your daughter's bedroom, or you allow a girlfriend to go back to your son's bedroom, bedrooms are intimate places. It's like where, I mean, we sleep, and where there's no other time where we are more vulnerable than when we're
laying down, going to sleep,
laying in bed asleep, right? Yeah. And so bedrooms become a place of vulnerability, right? A place of intimacy. And so when you allow your daughter to take some boy to her bedroom, you are giving her permission to take him into an intimate place. And then we wonder why they do stupid things. We're not helping them avoid compromising situations.
And you might have those rules in your house, but if you haven't talked to your son or your daughter a lot, and told them specifically consequences that could come from that type of impurity, they might just go do it behind your back.
Absolutely.
What I was going to say, and I think that's one of the biggest things as parents that you're charged with doing. You need to use your experiences, because, I mean, let's face it, as parents, we're older. We've seen more things, so your kids don't have to like what you're doing, but you're doing it because you love them and because you want to do what's best for them.
You know what I hear parents say all the time? Well, I made mistakes when I was their age, so I expect them to make mistakes. That's lazy parenting. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, a stupid man or a wise, let me get it right. A stupid man will learn from his own mistake. A fool learns from nobody's mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So if we want to be wise parents, then what we need to do is help our children learn from our mistakes rather than expecting them to make the same mistakes.
Yeah, that makes
and here's something you've probably heard me say a lot, and you have too, because Matt's been one of my youth workers
for years,
for almost a decade.
I can't remember how long, but yeah.
But I have said this before: whatever parents do, children do in excess. So if you're expecting your children to make the same mistakes that you did, you are giving them permission to actually take it up a notch, right?
Yeah.
So what you need to be doing instead is helping them learn from your mistakes so that they don't want to repeat them. Okay.
And same thing with good things. What you do in excess, what you do in
moderation.
Moderation.
They do in
excess.
excess. Yeah, absolutely.
If you read your Bible every once in a while, they'll probably see that and go, well, I need to be doing that. And they might do it every day.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Well, when you think about it, if you show them that you're wanting to go out and volunteer, they're going to do that. They're going to do 10 times over.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
that's right. And then the last point is walk the line. Acknowledge evil for what it is. Now, this is where things get hard. Because the fact of the matter is, so many of us don't want to acknowledge that the things we're listening to and the things we're looking at are actually wrong, because we know once we acknowledge that, what has to happen?
We have to
You
change.
have to change.
You have to change.
Nobody wants to
Nope.
change. Nobody wants to give up the control that they think they have over their own life. I think that's the root of the problem.
So listen to this though. Ephesians 5:11 says, "Take no part in the unfruitful work of darkness." Take no part in the unfruitful work of darkness, but instead expose them. So here's what I'm seeing in the Christian world that we live in today. That rather than exposing the unfruitful works of darkness, Christians are indulging in those same works. And then that begs the question, is that form of Christianity even true Christianity?
I don't think so, no.
Jesus says, out of the storeroom of your heart, your mouth speaks. You could say, out of the storeroom of your heart, you live. And so if your life is not attesting to holiness, there's cause to question whether or not your heart is a heart of holiness. And so this whole guarding your gates thing is super important, right? Because we're called to expose the deeds of the dark rather than sneaking off to a movie to watch it, rather than downloading the songs on our iTunes or Spotify or whatever it is, whatever we're using to listen to music, our Zune.
Ben Lockridge.
What,
Sorry.
rather than sneaking on, than on Netflix, watching the filth. We're to be exposing that stuff. I would venture to say that if more Christians were willing to stand up and expose evil for what it is, there wouldn't be so much evil in our culture. Why does pornography proliferate? Because Christians
does
don't
it
take a stand against
Rule
it.
the
Exactly.
internet, yeah.
Christians don't take a stand. Why do they make shows like Magic Mike and 50 Shades of whatever? Because there's like they're in their what do they call it?
15th
Trilogy.
one or something
The
like
third
that.
one
Yeah.
now. Why do they make stuff like that? Well, they wouldn't make any money if Christian women didn't go to the movie theater and watch it. Okay? Because last time I checked, this country was supposed to be a majority Christian, right? I have my doubts that's true, but that's at least how they answered on the census. Okay? The filthy music, they wouldn't make it because it wouldn't sell if it weren't for Christians buying it, right? So rather than exposing the deeds of darkness, we are indulging in the deeds of darkness. And then we wonder why we don't see Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, working in our churches, working in our lives the way that he's working in some other parts of the world.
Yep.
Okay? It's because we're playing with darkness.
Yeah.
Okay? And so we need to be guarding our gates. Right? So, wow. I got pretty real there at the end.
He usually does.
So, I apologize if I stepped on anyone's toes. Well, I don't really. If
No.
if your
No,
toes got stepped
no.
on, they need to be
Sorry.
stepped on.
Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah.
But
no.
I hope I didn't stomp.
But sometimes you need to have your toes stomped on.
Yeah, there you go.
You know?
But we got to get real, folks. We live in dark
We
days.
got to get ready.
Got to get ready.
Come on.
Real and ready. So, I don't know. Anything else you want to say, Katie? Or have we beat this horse?
I think we have.
Matt?
Well, I'll say one thing, and again, it's funny. I always said I would never sound like my dad or my grandparents or anything, but again, my grandmother used to always say, well, if you lay with the dog, you're going to get fleas.
There you go.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
Yep.
you surround yourself with light, with Christian people that can help you stay out of that darkness.
That's good.
Push you to guard your
Yeah,
gates.
exactly.
Yeah, accountability.
Accountability.
Find a group of people who
We'll
are
talk
committed to
about that.
purity
Yeah.
like you are, and then hold one another accountable. That's right.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I hope that this was encouraging to you and challenging as well. And
We thank you for watching.
absolutely thank you for watching. We'll love you even more if you'll subscribe and share.
Click it.
Where's it at? It's over here. No,
Are you sure it's not like right here?
it's right. No, Wait, it's over here.
It's this way. It's
this
right
one.
here.
Here.
Click this red button.
Ah, we get confused every
They'll
single time.
know.
Here's the subscribe. Subscribe right here.
Subscribe.
Like over here. Share is somewhere right in here.
Somewhere, yeah. We don't.
Leave comments, questions. Maybe you got a prayer request.
Oh yeah,
leave a
comment
prayer-
prayer requests. We
leave a
would
prayer
love
request.
to
We'll pray
pray
for you.
for all of our subscribers or just viewers, whatever. We would love to.
Yeah, we're not gonna pray for you if you're not a subscriber.
Yes, we
kid,
will.
I kid. But do subscribe.
And check out Wayne's quick thought tomorrow.
Yep, I'll have a quick thought tomorrow. Katie here, I have a quick thought on Saturday. And we'll be back next week with our regularly scheduled programming. Hey, thanks for watching the Wayne and Kate Show. I'm Wayne,
I'm Kate.
and this is...
Matt. Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to say my name.
See ya.